Hello and welcome to another episode of Felonious. My name is Emma.
And I'm Nazia. And this is our fourth time trying to record this episode, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is not cursed. Damn it.
Yeah, we had a mass of technical issues.
Yeah, just every week. One week it was my children.
It was life.
It was life. It was human issues. But other than that, yeah, we just seem to keep having technical issues. But hopefully we can get this one done. So.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers and toes and whatever else crossed. In this episode, we take a look at honour-based violence and honour killings. We discover the meaning behind these terms and the horrendous acts of violence, abuse and murder committed by family members on mostly women who they believe have brought shame to their family. We will look at different countries and the statistics they have gathered on honour crimes respectively. We will discuss in depth a few cases, including what is considered to be the first homosexual honour killing in Turkey, and we will talk about Nina Aouilk, who is a survivor. So this episode is going to include discussions on abuse in all forms, violence and death.
The act of honour killings or honour-based violence is believed to have come from tribal customs, wherein an accusation against a woman is seen as tarnishing her family's reputation. In adherence to these traditions, male relatives of a woman who engages with unrelated men, regardless of the innocence of the interaction, are expected to execute the woman first before pursuing the man. According to human rights groups, the most common reason behind honour killings is refusing to enter into an arranged marriage and rape or sexual assault. But killings have happened because of a choice of clothes, which are deemed inappropriate, and displaying what is considered as disobedient behaviour. Violence against women has been documented throughout history. Most ancient civilizations had punishments for women adulterers, while men could sleep with whoever they chose without fear of being punished. An American professor, Dr. Vivian Fox, said, "Violence towards women was seen as a natural expression of male dominance, ordained by the gods, supported by the priests, implemented by the law. Women came to accept and to psychologically internalize compliance as necessary. Violence towards women in all its forms has and still thrives in such an environment." The United Nations did a global study on homicides of women and girls during the year of 2017. The study found 87,000 women were intentionally killed, of which 50,000 were killed by partners or family members. To put it into perspective, that's 137 women who are killed every day across the world by family members. But not all of these were classed as honour killings, as most are not reported and in most cases are treated as suicides or accidents. The UN estimates 5,000 women are murdered each year in so-called honour killings. We'll look at some statistics and various cases from different countries now. And we'll start with Jordan. And women in Jordan used to be put in jail for their own safety for an indefinite amount of time to stop them from being harmed or killed from family members. This also used to happen in Yemen. This practice stopped in Jordan in 2018, and now women are sent to safe houses known as Dar Abne. In 1996, Jordanian scholar and feminist Lama Abu Odeh addressed the issue of virginity in honour killings. She said, "The hymen becomes the socio-physical sign that guarantees virginity and gives the woman a stamp of respectability and virtue." Lama looked at verdicts related to honour crimes and pointed out that if a woman was seen conversing with a man in public, then chances are high that she would suffer violence. She further states, "The woman is seen as having jeopardised not her vaginal hymen, but her physical and social one. She moved with a body and in a space where she is not supposed to be." The National Jordanian Committee to Eliminate So-Called Crimes of Honour was founded in 1999. The group was formed of 7 women and 4 men with a goal of raising awareness about honour killings and lobbying government for the abolition of all discriminatory laws against women. One of the main laws they wanted to see abolished was Article 340, which allowed lenient sentences for men who kill their wives or female family members suspected of committing adultery. The group got people to sign petitions and were very successful, but they also faced backlash. One Conservative member of Parliament, Mahmoud Karabshah, said women adulterers cause a great threat to our society because they are the main reason that such acts of adultery happen. If men do not find women with whom to commit adultery, then they will become good on their own. Karabshah lobbied against the group in Parliament, and despite a dozen deputies voting in favour to reform the law, the bill was rejected and Article 340 remains in law today. In 2014, a man shot and killed his daughter after she left her marital home for several days. He wanted to cleanse the family's honour. The court revoked his death sentence and he got served 10 years instead. His sentence was reduced after the family dropped the charges against him. In Pakistan, in 2022, 384 women were killed in so-called honour killings, mostly ordered by elders of a tribal council called Jaga. Most of these killings were a result of social media and doctored images of the victim, seen as an assault on family honour. Convictions in these cases and gender-based violence in general are low, at 1 to 2.5%. In Kazakhstan, in 2011, 6 men and women were killed because a video of them dancing was shared. A brother of the victims was killed 7 years later by another family member because he was pursuing the case. The accused were acquitted in 2023 due to a lack of evidence.
I remember that video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can't remember what it was circulating on. I can't even remember what social media existed back then. It was obviously before like TikTok. But I remember this video, and like to anyone else outside of these sorts of cultures, it would seem like quite innocent and harmless because it was just a group of people dancing in a room. It was quite innocent. It's not like in a club where people are grinding up against each other, if you know what I mean. They were just dancing. But in those sort of cultures or those sort of communities, it would have been so shocking and like so shameful. But obviously for people to lose their lives because of it is so extreme. But as we discuss in this episode, in these communities, it seems justified when it obviously isn't. But like, I remember that video. And they were young people as well.
So they were just dancing, having a good time?
They were just in a room dancing to music.
Yeah.
Like just dancing, not even with each other, just like, you know, no one was seducing anyone. They were just dancing, enjoying themselves.
In 2023, an 18-year-old was shot dead by her father and uncle on orders from the tribal council. Images of the girl had gone viral on social media. Amnesty International Deputy Regional Director Nadia Rahman said in response of this killing, while repeated so-called honour killings have resulted in legislative amendments and societal outrage in the country, they remain unabated. It is not enough to arrest people after such attacks take place. The authorities must end impunity for violence and abolish so-called village and tribal councils that prescribe such horrific crimes. In 2016, the Pakistani government amended its legislation so that those convicted of honour killings receive a mandatory life sentence. Prior to this change, the killer could avoid serving time if pardoned by the victim's family. However, according to human rights groups, perpetrators are still evading justice. In 2022, the brother of Kandil Balok, a social media star, was acquitted of murdering her on appeal. He confessed to the murder in 2016 and received a life sentence.
I remember this case as well. She was like dubbed as the Pakistani Kim Kardashian, but she was quite not provocative in like Western standards, but in Pakistani standards, she was provocative in the way that she would dress, and she would be in like music videos and stuff, which was considered shameful in her family. I didn't realise that her brother had been acquitted, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, from a life sentence, after he confessed as well.
Yeah.
On the 30th of January this year, 2025, an article was released detailing how Anwar al-Haq, a father who had moved back to Pakistan from the US, shot his teenage daughter because he disapproved of the content that she had posted on her TikTok account. And he admitted to shooting her and was charged with the murder. Hira was, well, we believe her to be a US citizen, and she was a teenager at the time, around 13 or 14 years old. So her father had lived in the US for 25 years and had Hira while he was living there, and then moved back to Pakistan. And that's when he murdered his daughter. The reason behind it was that they didn't agree with her social media. They had an objection to her dressing, the lifestyle that she led, and the people that she would socialise with. Her uncle was also arrested in connection with the killing, and is in trial at the moment, I think. And if they're found guilty, they could be facing a life sentence in Pakistan. So I hope they do, and it's not another Kandil Belloc where
they're acquitted.
They're acquitted, yeah.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Like, if she was raised in the US, what do they expect? Like, how can they expect her to be growing up with their standards from back home, you know?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that case in Birmingham. We don't discuss it in this episode, but there was an honour killing in, I think it was Birmingham, where they didn't agree with the daughter dressing Western. Shafilia Ahmed, she was British Pakistani, and she was killed at the age of 17 after they tried to force her into an arranged marriage in Pakistan. But they were basically disagreed with her, the way she dressed, wearing makeup, and, you know, obviously she went to a state school, mixed sex school, so she was being friends with boys and stuff as well as girls, and they disagreed with that. But it's like, come on, you're raising your child in a Western society. What do you expect? But yeah, like, and even more so for this latest case, Hira Anwar, these are even more modern times, if you know what I mean. And that case has been all over TikTok and social media because there's more awareness about these things. So there's more. What do you say? How do you describe it? More.
Well, yeah, there is more discussion about it, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, there's more discussions around it, especially within the South Asian community.
And social media probably has helped with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and funny enough, like, it was because of her TikTok. Well, not just because of her TikTok, but that was one of the contributing factors to her being killed by honour-based violence. And now people are talking about it on TikTok because that's how news spreads and more awareness is raised. And I think, like, you know, on social media, more girls and women feel empowered to share their experiences of what they face in their communities. And I guess in some families, that can mean they still face these sort of consequences, which probably happened in her case. I don't know.
Yeah, because if the parents don't find it, then someone in the community will.
Yeah, and there's always going to be someone who grasses up on that girl, you know.
As we'll find out.
Yeah, in some of the cases that we discuss. Yeah. So in the UK, honour-based abuse rose from 884 cases to 1,599 between 2016 and 2020. That's an 81% rise. This rise could have been due to more victims coming forward and better identification of offences by police. The lockdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated honour-based abuse. According to the Crown Prosecution Service, genital mutilation and forced marriages are considered to be honour-based abuse, committed to, quote, protect or defend the honour of an individual, family and/or community for alleged or perceived breaches of the family and/or community's code of behaviour. It is estimated that there are between 12 to 15 honour killings in Britain every year. Since April 2019, the Home Office, the body responsible for immigration, security and law and order in the UK, has collected data from police forces on HBA offences. Between 2019 and 2020, over 2,000 offences were recorded. The Greater Manchester Police Force were excluded from this dataset due to having a new IT system installed, and so were unable to respond to the request. The charity organisation Karma Nirvana, which supports victims of HBA crimes, said the omission from England's third biggest police force was significant, as the charity receives a huge number of calls to its helplines from this area. The charity called for fresh review of policing of honour-based abuse, as many of the recommendations in the 2015 report had not been implemented. This report found that only 3 out of 43 police forces in England and Wales were adequately prepared to respond to victims of honour-based abuse. The charity said many victims are still not believed, the abuse is dealt with as cultural, and the family is still deemed as a protective factor, when clearly in these cases it is your family you are reporting. Victims always have multiple perpetrators who are extremely convincing and do not report these abuses. They are organised and will work collectively to deceive the police and further isolate victims. And we'll see this in the cases that we discuss later on in the episode.
Yeah, how the police respond.
I've just remembered that I used to know someone who committed an honour killing.
Really?
Yeah. This Pakistani guy that my mum knew, he used to come around our house quite a lot. His daughter, she went to our school, and so did her brother. I think she was either in the year above or 2 years above, I can't remember, but she was older than us. And the son, her brother, was 1 or 2 years below us. But she started dating this guy, and her dad, this guy that my mum knew, he hired the boyfriend in his factory. And the factory, like, he was doing some illegal stuff with the factory anyway. But the guy that was dating his daughter, he hired him just to, like, give him a false sense of security. And then he ended up killing him.
Oh, shit.
Because he didn't agree with the relationship.
How old was this guy then? Can't have been very old.
I have no idea. Guess old enough to work. Like, I think the daughter was 16 at the time. She was just a teenager. But I don't know how old the guy was. I don't really know much about him.
Mm.
But yeah, my mum just told me one day, and she was quite, like, just quite matter of fact about it.
Yeah.
But it was so long ago. It was like when we were still in school, in secondary school.
Oh, okay. It's like over 20 years ago then.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like, it was a very, very long time ago. But like, this guy, I knew him from a young age. And obviously, like, I guess in most of these cases, he seemed like a nice guy, because they all do to members outside of their community.
Yeah.
But I guess this relationship was enough for him to do something so evil.
It makes you wonder what he's done in the past, though, doesn't it?
It makes you wonder what the home life was like.
Yeah.
Because you don't know you don't know what it's like behind closed doors. And I'm trying to remember if we ever saw the girl, like, if we would have seen the girl. I don't know if she had already, like, gone to college or, like, just finished her GCSEs or whatever. But I just, like, it makes me wonder how that impacted the family afterwards. Like, in terms of her, within her own family and her extended family, like, her relationship with her mum, was she estranged or whatever, or kicked out?
Yeah, if the rest of her family felt the same.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
could be that it was just her father that had those ideals. We don't know.
Yeah, because, like, I mean, I don't even know what her name was or what her brother's name was. I just remember seeing them in school. I only knew, like, their dad's name, and I don't know anything about their mum, his wife or ex-wife. I don't know. It was just him that we knew. But yeah, it was like a long time ago.
So he got caught, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened to his factory, but I know for sure that he was employing people illegally to work for him. So I don't know if then that also came out through the investigation into the murder or honour killing, but it must have done.
Mm. It's a bit close to home.
A little bit, like, the man was in our house.
Yeah.
You know, like, he knew my family. Yeah, like, we'll have to see if there's a news article on it.
Yeah, have to do a quick Google search on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, In Iraq, the true number of honour killings committed are unknown because of severe underreporting. There are estimates that several hundreds of women and girls are killed every year. In 2017, there were 272 honour crimes reported to the police and sent to court, up from 224 in 2016. The penal code in Iraq allows honour as a mitigation of acts of violence against family members. Lenient punishments are given on the grounds of provocation or if the accused had honourable motives. Article 41 allows for the punishment of a wife by her husband. Article 409 was suspended in 2000, but it stated that anyone who happens to find their wife committing adultery or their girlfriend in bed with a lover and kills them immediately or assaults them in a way which causes their death or severe disability should be punished with detention for a period not exceeding 3 years. Despite this law being suspended, the patriarchal mentality of the society and discriminatory mindset of law bodies against women still exists. Tiba al-Ali was a 22-year-old YouTube star who was killed by her father in January 2023 in Iraq. Tiba's father was unhappy about her decision to live alone and move to Turkey. She had travelled there with her family in 2017 and refused to go back to Iraq with them. This is when she started making YouTube videos discussing her independence, her fiancé, makeup tutorials, among other things. According to voice recordings attributed to Tiba, she had left the family because she was a victim of sexual abuse from her brother. Tiba's father strangled her to death while she was asleep and later handed himself into police. He was sentenced to only 6 months in prison as her murder was not considered premeditated. Iraq's Interior Ministry spokesman said, "An accident happened to Tiba al-Ali. In the perspective of law, it is a criminal accident, and in other perspectives, it is an accident of honour killings," which does not make sense at all. How can it be a criminal accident? It's like saying humane slaughter. And also the fact that nothing seems to have happened to her brother for abusing her, but...
Yeah, but he's a boy, so it's all right.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
That doesn't bring shame to the family, no? Her death sparked protests around Iraq. A veteran politician, Ala Talabani, said on Twitter, "Women in our societies are hostage to backward customs due to the absence of legal deterrence and government measures, which currently are not commensurate with the size of domestic violence crimes." Female rights activist Dr. Layla Hussein said, "These killings are often rooted in misogyny and a desire to control women's bodies and behaviour. Using the term honour killing can be harmful to the victims and their families," she said. "It reinforces the idea that they are somehow responsible for their own deaths, that they brought it upon themselves by doing something wrong or shameful." Up until 1981, Italy also allowed mitigating circumstances for murders committed out of honour. Article 587 stated that anyone who discovered their spouse in illegitimate relations causing offence to their honour or that of their family were to be sentenced between 3 and 7 years in prison. In 2023, the parents of Saman Abbas were given life sentences for the 18-year-old's death. They murdered their daughter because she refused to have an arranged marriage. Her parents also found pictures of Saman with a young man in Bologna. She refused the arranged marriage in 2020, and several months after that she lived under the protection of social services until November 2021, when she returned to their family home. Her body was found at a farmhouse 18 months after she went missing. The post-mortem of her body showed that she had injuries relating to strangulation. Her father fled to Pakistan after her murder, but was extradited to face trial in Italy. Her mother was convicted in her absence, and it was believed she was hiding in Pakistan. The teenager's uncle was also given a 14-year sentence for his involvement, but 2 of her cousins were cleared. Shortly after Saman's disappearance, Italy's Union of Islamic Communities issued a fatwa, a religious ruling rejecting forced marriages.
In Sweden in 2016, there were 105 murders committed, and 10 of these were honour killings. 6 of these were women, which represented a third of the 18 women murdered that year. It isn't only women that are victims of honour killings, though. In Sweden, in 2016, a man was a victim because he had an affair with a married woman. 23-year-old Ramin Shazai was forced into a car where he was beaten and then strangled. The murder was committed in an act of revenge. Ramin was having an affair with the married woman when she called it off, after separating from her husband. Ramin shared pictures of the both of them kissing on social media and sent friend requests to the woman's ex-husband and his family members. Both the woman, her ex-husband, and 2 of her relatives were sentenced to life in prison. Data collection in the United States concerning honour-based violence is very poor. There is no national or state agency that collects the data. That does not mean to say that honour killings do not happen in the US. In 1989, Palestina Aissa, also known as Tina, was murdered by both of her parents because they were not happy with Tina choosing a westernised lifestyle. The FBI had recorded the murder as they had planted listening devices in their family home, as they suspected the father, Zain Aissa, was involved in illegal activities for the Palestine Liberation Organization. The FBI surveillance on Tina's father was not staffed on the night of her murder. The recordings included a number of phone calls between Tina's father and his other daughters to discuss how to get rid of Tina. Her father later claimed that Tina was killed out of self-defense after she threatened her parents and demanded money. According to her parents, Tina was taking drugs and went against their wishes by dating a young man they disapproved of. The transcript of the tape is shocking and very upsetting. Tina's father can be heard saying, "Listen, my dear daughter, do you know that this is the last day? Tonight, you're going to die." Tina all the while pleads to her mother for help, who refuses to do so and tells her to shut up. Tina was stabbed 6 times in the chest, piercing her heart, lungs and liver. Her parents were convicted of her murder and sentenced to death in 1991. After the verdicts were given, a disgruntled family friend said that she was unhappy about the jury not recognising the Palestinian culture and that Tina's parents had to kill her or they would have lost respect. She further stated they'd be embarrassed in front of everybody in the country like somebody when they go without their clothes outside.
See, I have this problem when communities or families attribute their beliefs to an entire nation's culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's a subculture. Not every Palestinian family, just like not every Bengali family, not every Pakistani family, not every Iraqi, Iranian, whatever family, Turkish, they
don't hold these values to this extent.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, same with when people say, the Muslim culture, it's not the Muslim culture.
Yeah, it's a small percentage.
Yeah.
Like, they're kind of fanatical about this particular...
these ideals.
Yeah, these ideals, yeah.
And which is mainly about oppressing girls and women. And again, it's that whole thing about raising your child in a different culture to where you have grown up kind of thing. Like, I get it. It's a shock to the system, and that generation would not have known necessarily how to handle that. And that's why these things happen. But going back to the case that's happened in America in January, it still happens. I mean, the parents have to embrace those, like, for example, if they emigrate to the UK or to the US, they have to embrace some of that culture to integrate.
He had been living in the US for 25 years, so
yeah,
it's not like everything was new.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long Palestina Aissa's parents were living in the US, but they would have had to have integrated to an extent. And again, they're raising their child in this society. I'm pretty sure in the 1980s, like, Palestine wasn't, if I understood correctly, it wasn't like a hugely oppressed society, if you know what I mean. It's not like in Saudi Arabia where, like, they were quite, I don't want to say liberal. Yeah, maybe liberal, I don't know. But I just hate when people say it's a disgrace to X, Y, Z, like, culture, when it's not. Like, it does no favours to the culture at all.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised the FBI weren't listening.
It's just sod's law, isn't it?
Yeah.
That something like the one time that they decide to have a day off to go eat their donuts.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And we see this about the police or...
in the UK.
Yeah, in the UK. And so it's not a complete surprise.
No. Now we're going to look at a couple of cases in depth, and we'll start with Banaz Mahmoud, who was born in northern Iraq in 1985. Her family came to Britain when Banaz was very young. Banaz's sister, Bekal, takes part in the Real Stories documentary, Banaz Mahmoud's Honour Killing, A Tragic Story. Bekal is in hiding from her family as she testified against them. The men in Banaz and Bekal's family held traditional cultural beliefs, including their uncle, Ari Mahmoud, who was a very wealthy man and so had a lot of control over what the family were allowed to do. Bekal was the first to go against the family ideals and soon ran into trouble with her father. She says that she wasn't allowed to grow her nails, pluck her eyebrows, or use beauty products. She received a lot of beatings, which led her to leaving home when she was 15 years old. According to the ideals held by the community Bekal and Banaz grew up in, this brought shame to the family. It's just funny, I've just had a thought about this uncle who had a lot of control over the family. It makes me think, at least from my experience in the Bengali community, maybe in other cultures it's probably the same. There's usually a male relative who has who's respected the most.
So there's a hierarchy almost.
Sort of, yeah. So for example, in my family, my mum's oldest brother, he was the one that everyone would go to for advice, or if there was a dispute in the family, he would be the one to kind of mediate and whatever. If there were big gatherings, it was always at his house.
Mm.
It was like the headquarters, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like other friends of mine, there was someone like that in their family as well. So I wonder if this Ari Mahmoud was kind of like that figure in Bekal's family.
Possibly.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. In 2002, Bekal's brother asked to meet her. He lured her to a park where he got her to carry a suitcase along a path in front of him and told her not to turn around and look at him. He then hit her over the head with a dumbbell and put his arm around her neck. Bekal bit his arm and she started to shout at him and said that he was trying to kill her. He started to cry and said as he was the eldest brother, he had to do this and put the family's shame to an end. He told Bekal that their dad paid him to do it. She didn't press charges against her brother and went into hiding. In 2003, Banaz was married at the age of 17. It was an arranged marriage with a man 10 years older than her. He had just come to the UK from Iraq, and the couple moved to Coventry. In 2005, Banaz left her husband and returned to her parents' home. In October, she went to a police station to make a statement about how her husband had treated her. She was interviewed by West Midlands Police. The documentary shows footage of the interview. Banaz explains that her husband was strict and had traditional views of what a husband and wife relationship should be and how women should behave. He raped Banaz a number of times and beat her if she tried to stop him. He threatened her and said that he would kill her if she reported it. As she was only 17 at the time, she didn't know if this was part of a normal relationship, so she let him rape her. She said I was his shoe and he would wear it just whenever he felt like it. He convinced her that her family loved him more than they loved her and that she didn't have anyone to talk to. Bekal went to see Banaz when she was living with her husband, and she said that she was not happy and that her husband was physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive. Banaz kept a diary and wrote down whenever her husband was abusive, and she also took pictures of her body to show her injuries. Her husband found these and destroyed most of them, with Banaz keeping one set of photos which he didn't know about. She described one attack where he kicked her in the head and her ears and lips were bleeding. She said that this attack caused her to suffer from memory loss. Once her sister found out about the abuse, she told her parents. Banaz's husband admitted to the family that he is abusive, but only because Banaz is disrespectful. The family found this acceptable and sent Banaz back to him and told her to try harder. She left him several times, but always had to go back. She was told that a divorce or separation would bring shame to the whole family. She finally left him for good after an argument when he told her that she was ugly and a whore. She phoned her mother and said that she wanted a divorce. She packed her bags and left. It's quite common, I find, when typically, I don't know what it's like now, but typically when there's an arranged marriage, it's common for the man to be like a decade older.
Yeah. And the bride has no idea what a relationship should be.
Yeah. Often, like sometimes you might get a bride who has had a boyfriend and therefore might know what a relationship should be like, but they might still be virgins. They might just be dating someone. But like in Banaz's case, if she's never had like a boyfriend or someone who's just loved her and she's a virgin, and then she's just marrying a guy that she has no idea who he is. He's come over from back home with the ideals and the expectations from back home and expecting his wife to just mould into it. And I mean, it's going slightly on a tangent, but sometimes this also pisses me off at the same time because you get boys that have grown up in the West and they get away with having girlfriends, but then they don't want to marry someone who's grown up in the West. So they go back home and marry someone from the village and bring them over because it's easier to mould them. Do you see what it's so backwards how it works. I'm not saying obviously it's not always the case, but the girls, like, it's just that scenario where a girl raised in the West will marry someone from back home, whereas a boy raised in the West will marry someone from back home, but for a completely different reason. You know, it's like, it's so, the double standards, it's a joke.
It's the patriarchy as well.
Yeah, it's so misogynistic. Yeah. After this, she met a man called Rahmat Suleimani, who her family didn't approve of. The police later recovered text messages between the couple, which showed how much they loved each other. They kept their relationship a secret because of the community they lived in. They were constantly under watch and everything would be fed back to the family. After Banaz left her husband, she was concerned that men were following her. She said that she recognised one of them. She had seen him at family occasions like weddings. They would sometimes follow her from a car, call her by her name and try to convince her to go with them and get inside the car. This is why she went to the police station, as she was worried that they would do something to her.
But isn't that kind of stalking?
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think that she would have had anyone in her support system to tell her that this is stalking. And she was probably so scared. Well, no, because she went to the police.
As we will find out.
No, that's true, because the police should then have pursued that as a case of stalking. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Thanks.
No, I can't believe, considering we've discussed this case so much. Sometimes the light bulbs switch on.
Maybe I should have mentioned that after we speak about the police.
Yeah, that's true. Well, no, we can go back to it now. Even more reason to be pissed off at them. So she asked the police officer what will happen now that she has given a statement. And they said they will have to make inquiries and that they would keep her up to date. Surely at this point, they should have advised her, this sounds like stalking.
Yeah. You know, your safety might be at risk here.
Yes. Anyway, by going to the police, Banaz was putting herself in serious danger. The police officers did nothing to follow up her claim and didn't track her husband down to question him. It took them 3 months to write up a statement after her visit to them. Banaz went to the police 5 times to report the threats that she was facing. In December 2005, 2 months after making her statement, Banaz and Rahmat were seen together kissing by members of the local community. Someone called Banaz's uncle and told him what they saw. Banaz's uncle, father and other siblings had a meeting and a decision was made, and that was to kill Banaz. 2 days after the men had their meeting, Banaz went to the police station again to say that she heard her uncle discussing her killing. This goes back to my point where I think he was obviously the man of the family.
The ringleader.
Yeah, because like the snitch is going to him and he's basically advising her dad.
It makes you wonder if her dad had these same values or if it was just the uncle who was putting that on them.
Or if it was her dad that found out about this relationship, maybe he would have gone to the uncle anyway to ask for advice and it still would have happened. I don't know. A week later, she delivered a letter to the police identifying 5 family members who she said were going to murder her. But she also wrote in the letter that she didn't want the police to take action, and that's exactly what they did. They didn't investigate any further. According to the documentary, many people who are in danger of being a victim of honour killings often do not want their families to be caught by authorities. On New Year's Eve 2005, Banaz was tricked by her father, who asked her to go to a relative's house for a meeting to discuss her divorce. He got her to take a suitcase, and when she arrived, he forced her to drink brandy in the hopes of stupefying her. He got her to sit on the sofa to watch the television and told her not to look at what he was doing. But she did turn around and saw her father coming towards her wearing rubber gloves. She knew she was going to be killed, but her father then left the room, giving Banaz a chance to escape. She managed to get out of the house and put her hands through the next door neighbour's window to try and get their attention. She then climbed over the garden fence and staggered off up the road. She had bare feet and she was bleeding from her hands and wrists. She collapsed on the floor outside a cafe. She was taken to hospital and the staff there said they had never seen anyone so frightened. Rahmat went to see Banaz in hospital and got her to tell him everything that had happened while filming it on his phone. Banaz says, "He brought me a drink in a black bag. I opened it and he told me, drink it slowly. The curtains were closed. It was very dark. He went out of the room. Then he came in the room wearing Reebok trainers. He was wearing blue gloves. I tried to leave. He told me to sit down because I will feel sleepy. I sat down until he went into another room. I looked to the back door and there was a key in it. I removed the key and ran into the back garden." Banaz reported this to the police. A female police officer didn't believe what Banaz told her and dismissed her as a girl who had just drunk too much. She said she was manipulative and melodramatic. The police officer even had the nerve to try and charge Banaz with criminal damage as a window had broken during her escape. After her stay in hospital, Banaz went to stay with Rahmat. Her family managed to persuade her to meet them again at a McDonald's in Tooting. They encouraged her to go back home, and she did. On the 24th of January 2006, Banaz disappeared. Rahmat reported her as missing. DCI Carolyn Good got a call from DS Andy Craig, who is concerned about Banaz. The Kurdish community that Banaz's family were a part of didn't help the police with their investigations into her disappearance. There were men who made false statements, seen as perverting the course of justice. That reminds me of the Pakistani girl in Birmingham. Like, her family weren't very cooperative with police, and like they even went so far as being on national TV, making out that they were missing their daughter when they were the ones that killed her.
They knew full well what had happened.
Yeah. It just reminds me, like, there's parallels to that case, I find. A few days into the investigation, the police found out about Banaz's sister, Bakal, who was estranged from the family. The police interviewed Bakal and she knew her family were behind Banaz's disappearance. In March 2006, a member of the Kurdish community found Bakal and she received a phone call to say she would be the next person to be killed. The police moved Bakal to several houses to keep her safe. Carolyn Good then uncovered the letter that Banaz delivered her to her local police station in December 2005, identifying the people she believed would be responsible for her killing. Carolyn and her team were able to identify the men in Banaz's letter. Omar Hussein, Mohammed Ali, and Mohammed Hammer are the cousins of Banaz. Mohammed Hammer was arrested and charged for her murder, but the police could only keep Mohammed for a certain time as Banaz's body had not been found, and they couldn't prove that she was dead. The family were not communicating with the police. Her parents didn't phone to ask for an update on their daughter's missing case. Even when the police dredged the lake near her house, the family did not attend. Mohammed Hammer and Mohammed Ali were showing suspicious behaviour. The police looked at their phone records, which showed they were travelling to Birmingham from London on a number of occasions. Hammer had hired a car, and the GPS showed an area where the car had been parked. The police sent a helicopter to look at the area. They saw a freezer in the garden and decided to take a look. A forensic archaeologist looked at the ground in the garden and could see that the ground had been disturbed. Banaz's body was hidden in a suitcase buried 6 feet under the freezer. She was in a fetal position, which for DCI Carolyn Good makes it so much worse, as it's like a child being in a womb. She said the tragedy in this case is a child-parent relationship that has gone horribly wrong. Banaz's sister had to look at pictures of her body to identify her. 3 men, including her father and uncle, were charged with Banaz's murder. 2 suspects had fled to Iraq. Bakal testified against her family in court. Rahmat also gave evidence. Banaz was killed on the morning of the 23rd of January 2006. The suspects met at the house of Mohammed Hammer and then went to Banaz's home. Her parents left the home with her younger sister, leaving Banaz in the house. Banaz woke up to find Omar Hussein, Mohammed Ali, and Mohammed Hammer in the house. The police had secretly taped Mohammed Hammer boasting about what had happened that morning. In the recording, he said that he slapped her and raped her. Hammer put his leg on her back, and Ali put his on her neck. They put a cord around her neck and held it tightly while stamping on her neck at the same time. It took 5 minutes before Banaz was strangled to death. Banaz's uncle and father were given life sentences for arranging her murder. Mohammed Hammer pleaded guilty and received a life sentence. The documentary makers tracked down her uncle and father at a police station, but they dodged their questions. Omar Hussein and Mohammed Ali fled to Iraq. Nobody had been extradited from Iraq to the UK before. Omar Hussein's family are quite powerful in Iraq, so were above the law. He was staying at his brother's house, who was a senior police officer. Omar had an argument with one of his brothers and he was shot in the leg. He was taken to hospital and then arrested. Mohammed Ali was involved in a car crash and was then arrested. The police team working on Banaz's murder travelled to Iraq to get the extradition order passed in the Iraqi courts. It took 3 years, but they were finally extradited and sentenced to life in prison in the UK. After Banaz's case, the Independent Police Complaints Commission launched an inquiry into police conduct. It found 9 officers, 6 from the Metropolitan Police and 3 from the West Midlands, had not done enough to protect Banaz. The Met Police said, "We have learnt a great deal since the Banaz case. We have developed working arrangements to ensure effective and professional standards of investigation and support. All London boroughs have a dedicated community safety unit. Awareness training on honour-based violence is also delivered. We are resolute in our determination to keep victims and potential victims safe." The West Mid said, "A range of measures have been put in place which include a policy for the investigation of rape and serious sexual assaults, the introduction of specialist teams, enhanced training in respect of honour-based violence, and closer working with partner and the public. We will continually review policies and procedures to ensure the safety of victims is paramount." It just sounds like the usual lessons have been learnt argument every time there's a police scandal.
Yeah, it's the same sort of statement, isn't it? They just take out words and put in new ones where they see fit.
Yeah, basically. There are a number of people in the Kurdish community who are against honour-based violence. Diana Nami from Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organisation said, "The majority of the community are against that kind of violence, but this small minority have lots of power over the whole community to keep silent. Speaking out is seen as a betrayal to the Kurdish community." But Diana further says, "We are not betraying them, we are defending the rights of women." Banaz's family never commented on the case before, but they contacted the documentary makers to say, "Banaz was a loving, caring, smart and kind girl who loved her family, and her family loved her. We miss her very much. We did everything to support her in her marriage, and when she decided to leave him, we supported her. Our children are not oppressed, and they never have been. It is not true that the family have tried to erase the memory of Banaz. It's the family that tends her grave. They said that Banaz's sister Bakal was never beaten and was never in any danger.
That's a crock of shit, because Bakal actually said in the documentary that her family have never once been to Banaz's grave.
Yeah, and isn't that also why Bakal wears the niqab? To cover her identity from them. Bakal says that she feels her life will always be in danger. In 2023, Bakal released a memoir called No Safe Place, Murdered by Our Father, which details her abusive childhood and Banaz's murder. Bakal hates the term honour killings and thinks it should be replaced with the devil's work, as she believes it's dishonour and disloyalty. She is currently campaigning for a new law called Banaz's Law, which would make misogynistic, cultural or religious defences aggravating and not mitigating factors in cases of femicide and gender-based violence. DCI Carolyn Good was awarded the Queen's Police Medal for her work on the case. Rahmat Soleimani went into hiding after Banaz's murder, but in 2016 he committed suicide, which is really sad because he must have just continued living in fear. Obviously heartbroken at the loss of his partner, and he probably didn't have any support from the sounds of it, and it could have all been avoided if the police just took her seriously.
That's the thing, like, the police shouldn't be labelling people like they did with Banaz, like calling her melodramatic and...
gaslighting her, basically.
Yeah, that should never happen.
Yeah.
Everyone who reports a case of violence in the family or domestic abuse, anything like that, should be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And forwarded to the correct facilities to help them.
And, you know, she did everything, like, I don't want to say right, but she went to the people that should have protected her for help.
Yeah, she was seeking out help, and she went to the people that thought she was going to get the help from.
Yeah.
But who just let her down.
Yeah, massively. So, like, kind of just going back to my point about the gender differences as well. Again, she was married off really young. It just reminded me, do you know, there was someone that we went to school with, and her family didn't want her to have a higher education because they were worried that she would get a boyfriend that they wouldn't approve of. And you'll know who I'm talking about. Obviously,
yeah,
I'm not
I know
mention
who
him.
you're talking about.
Yeah. But her brother was allowed to. Her brothers, because I think she had two brothers. They were allowed to pursue higher education, but they were absolute dickheads, to put it nicely.
Yeah.
They were absolute dickheads, and they would have been the sort of boys that you wouldn't want your daughter to end up with. And luckily for this person that we know, she did end up having an arranged marriage. Fortunately for her, it did work out. And career-wise, she did find, like, she has got a career now. She made up her own business, didn't she? I think so. I believe so. Like, she worked. She was allowed to work, and then she worked her way up, and eventually she's self-employed. Last I heard, she was self-employed, and she was doing very well. But it's the fact that families don't want their daughters to pursue certain things. Like with Bakal, she wasn't allowed to wear makeup and pluck her eyebrows and all that stuff. And like with the other cases that we've discussed before this, like they don't want their daughters dressing in a certain way, but no one is telling the boys, you know, don't behave this way. No one's telling the boys, don't be out past a certain hour. You know, don't go out looking for girls, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's always put on the girls. And it just pisses me off.
Was that the case in your family as well? Like,
yeah.
I know your brothers weren't really, like, they were good boys, weren't they? They weren't
terrible.
No.
No, I mean, we were quite an odd family anyway. But no, absolutely. Like, even in adulthood, while I was still living with my parents, so when I worked for the NHS, I remember, and when we talk about Nina Aouilk, it's that thing where at work, no one would know what it's like at at home, but like I'd be working 12 hours in the office. I'd be working in a corporate team, like in a very professional field. And then because I came home late at night because I was working on a big fucking stressful project in the office, and then I come home and I face the stress of like
explaining yourself.
Yeah, like, why are you coming back so late? Where have you been? And not being believed. Like, I've literally been working in an office for like 14 hours and then to come back home and it's like, you shouldn't be out that late. And it wasn't even like, even if it was believed that I was working in the office, but what will other people think? Because they're seeing you come home. And it's like, well, who the fuck cares what other people think? You know, like, why
are they spying on me?
Yeah, and also, why are they looking out their windows at this time of night?
You know? Why are they up? Why are they in bed?
Exactly. like it just didn't make sense. It's like, but what will other people think when they see you leaving the house at this time or coming back at this time? And it's like, who gives a shit? It's more about the appearance, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, there was definitely that thing about, especially like dressing a certain way. Like, remember I used to come to school, like I'd wear a hoodie and then as soon as I was in school, I'd like take that hoodie off. And I actually got snitched on by a family member as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there was one point where like I had you guys as one group of friends and I had the guy friends. And there was one day outside of school, I was hanging out. Like, and I was the only girl in this group of guy friends. We were just like grungy, gothy, not emo, but like grungy, gothy kids at the time. And I was just hanging out with these guys, like just going skating and playing computer games and whatnot. And I had a cousin that lived near one of the houses. And they saw me, A, walking with a group of boys, and B, wearing, God forbid, a T-shirt.
Oh, shit. Your arms.
Yeah, my arms, my elbows are on show. And they called my mum. And like, luckily I managed to like lie and say, no, I wasn't there. Like, they must have got me confused. But the fact that someone actually told my mum and said, I've seen your daughter hanging around with boys and wearing a T-shirt.
What a snitch.
Yeah. And like my brothers definitely had more freedoms than me and my sister did. And it was just the same in every family. And like even one of my friends who also Bengali, like she had an arranged marriage and it was like she'd never had a boyfriend. She'd never even been on holiday like with her friends or anything like that. Whereas the guy that she married, I don't know, like I assume he would have had girlfriends in the past, but he'd been on like lads' holidays, he was working, like he'd had lived quite a liberal life.
Yeah.
And she got married and they like really tried to, like her wedding present from his sisters was a burqa.
Oh, great.
And it's like, hang on, that's not your decision.
Yeah.
Like they really, like she divorced him in the end, thank God. But like they really tried to like mold her and like say, well, now you have to live by this way, like cover yourself up. You're not allowed to work, etc. You can't go out when you want. Even when she wanted to visit her family, like she had to run it by them.
Wow, that's being micromanaged, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, I did experience that. And I bet like Bakal and Banaz, they probably experienced that in their family as well.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And like it's the fact that in these honour-based violence situations, when there's rape involved, it's like A, someone is committing rape. B, he's probably married or will expect to be married. And like, why is there no expectation for the men to be virgins? Like, you know, like
yeah,
if we're going to go down that way.
Yeah.
Like, but he's not dishonoured by that, you know?
It's just double standard, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
As we will see in the other cases.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So our next case is about Rand Abdel Kader, who was killed in 2008 by her father in Basra in Iraq. Rand was a 17-year-old who was studying English at Basra University, and she came into contact with a 22-year-old British soldier while working on an aid program and subsequently fell in love with him. Their relationship was innocent, and they only saw each other while working at the aid station, where Rand was volunteering and the British soldier was delivering aid to displaced families. A friend of Rand's father told him that they had seen her with the soldier. Her father, Abdul Qadir Ali, accused her of having an affair and later killed her by stamping, suffocating and stabbing her. He did this in front of Rand's mother, Layla Hussein, and her 2 brothers. Rand was given an unceremonious burial to reflect the dishonour she brought on the family. Her father was arrested, but then released without charge 2 hours later. A sergeant of the Basra police said, "Not much can be done when we have an honour killing case. You are in a Muslim society and women should live under religious laws. The father has very good contacts inside the Basra government, and it wasn't hard for him to be released and what he did to be forgotten." The British Ministry of Defence wouldn't have advised their soldiers at the time on how to behave with Iraqi women. He would not have been aware that any form of relationship with Rand would have put her life at risk. Her mother later said about her daughter's murder, "I screamed and called out for her 2 brothers so they could get their father away from her. But when he told them the reason, instead of saving her, they helped him end her life." Layla was beaten by her husband, who broke her arm. Then she took the courageous step and left and divorced her husband and started to work for an organisation campaigning against honour killings. She said, "No man can accept being left by a woman in Iraq, but I would prefer to be killed than sleep in the same bed as a man who was able to do what he did to his own daughter." She received threats to her life from her husband's family and so went into hiding. Even her sons, who she said aided their father in her daughter's murder, disowned her. In May 2008, Layla was killed in a drive-by shooting. She was on her way to meet someone who would help smuggle her into Jordan, where she believed she would be safe. Her death happened 5 weeks after her daughter's murder. It is not known who killed Layla. Her ex-husband claimed he was in another city with their 2 sons at the time. Rand's father, Abdul Qadir, was later interviewed by the newspaper, The Observer. He said that killing his daughter was the right thing to do to reclaim his family's honour. He even mentioned that the police congratulated him. He said he doesn't regret murdering his daughter and that he should have done it earlier when she was born. He said, "If I had realised then what she would become, I would have killed her the instant her mother delivered her." He said that he had the support of other fathers in the community, and what she did was unacceptable to any Muslim that honours his religion. He prefers not to refer to his daughter at all, and likes to pretend that he never had one. He said he felt humiliated in front of his family and friends when he found out what his daughter did. He stated, "People from Western countries might be shocked, but our girls are not like their daughters that can sleep with any man they want, and sometimes even get pregnant without marrying. Our girls should respect their religion, their family and their bodies. I have only 2 boys from now on. That girl was a mistake in my life. I know God is blessing me for what I did." He also believes that his daughter's bad genes were passed down from her mother, Layla. Abdul Qadir was a government employee working in the health department, but was asked to leave because of the bad publicity, yet still received a wage.
I mean, isn't that just pure delusion?
But yeah, that's one word for it.
God is blessing me. Right.
Yeah, I don't know really what to say.
I mean, not at least, but in this case, at least the mother tried to defend her daughter, whereas some of the other cases, the mothers are just as complicit as the fathers. But the fact that the brothers, is just a level of delusion.
And brainwashing.
Yeah. And the fact that she brought dishonour because of what she did. She did nothing she was literally just working.
Yeah, in a place where there were British soldiers anyway, and she
Exactly.
happened to get to know this soldier, and like nothing happened between them, like relationship-wise.
Yeah, exactly.
They were just talking.
But this is the thing, like, it's going back to the situation like that I found myself in. It's like nothing's happened, but, you know, the father will get this idea in their head and then it just kind of snowballs into a complete false narrative. Like, oh, she's having an affair with this man. It's like with me, oh, she's going out clubbing or whatever, or she's just, I don't know what they thought I was doing, but it's like, no, I was just coming back from work. Yeah, sometimes I did go out, like, but so what? You know?
Yeah.
But it's like, it was just the times when I would come home literally from work or from, you know, seeing you guys for dinner.
Yeah, like shopping.
Yeah, like going to Westfields because it was open till 9 p.m. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm allowed to see my friends after work. Fuck you, kind of thing. But it's like, because they have this, I don't know, this delusion that you're doing something so wrong, and then I don't know, like, we'll never know why their minds work the way they do, but they obviously seem to have this completely false narrative that you're doing something so shameful, and it just ignites such anger in them.
Yeah, and there's no trust.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
You should trust your children, shouldn't you?
You know, I did have to lie to my family because, well, they didn't believe me anyway, or otherwise I would never have been able to like live you end up living a double life.
Yeah.
Obviously, in this girl's case, she didn't. She was literally just working.
Yeah. She was volunteering. She was doing something good.
Yeah, exactly. As we mentioned earlier, it is not just heterosexual women who are the victims of honour abuse and killings. There is also little data to represent how many honour killings are committed due to homophobic held beliefs. Ahmet Yildiz was just 26 when he died in 2008. He was shot near a cafe in Turkey. He tried to flee in his car, but he lost control and crashed. He died shortly afterwards in hospital. The LGBTQI community, along with Ahmet's friends, believe he was possibly the first gay victim of an honour killing in Turkey. Ahmet had come out to his parents, who were not happy and tried to get him to see a doctor to try and cure him, and they wanted him to marry a woman. Ahmet went to a prosecutor 5 months before he was killed to report that he was receiving death threats, but nothing was done. The LGBTQI community say this is the kind of treatment homosexual people receive from the hostile Turkish society. For example, the military see it as an illness. Men applying for an exemption to obligatory military service on grounds of homosexuality must provide proof, either in the form of an anal examination or photographs. How? I don't want to know.
What's that going to prove?
And also, not every homosexual person has anal sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so like narrow-minded and
I know.
stereotypical.
Yeah. Ahmet's friends arranged his funeral, but his family didn't take any responsibility and didn't attend. The only suspect of Ahmet's murder was his father, who is a fugitive and is yet to stand trial. In 2021, Iranian Ali Fazeli Monfared was a victim of a suspected honour killing by some family members after they found out he was gay. Ali, who was 20 years old when he was killed, applied for exemption from military service so that he could leave the country. Despite Iran's legal system prohibiting homosexuality, the military law allows for those who identify as gay or transgender to receive a medical exemption, as it is considered a mental illness. Ali received a card from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps after he revealed that he was gay. One of his male relatives discovered the card and found out he was gay. On the 4th of May, some of Ali's male relatives took him to a remote village where they beheaded him. According to reports, the relatives phoned Ali's mother to notify where her dead son's body was. According to the Iranian LGBTQ+ rights group, 6 rang, his mother was hospitalised after this. BBC Persian had received voice notes made by Ali in which he details threats he had received from family members. There are conflicting reports about arrests being made, including his half-brother and cousins. News of his death sparked a social media outcry with hashtags of Ali's name circulating, with users sharing Ali's posts in solidarity. You knew someone who was gay and had was it an arranged marriage?
I knew someone who was married to a homosexual guy.
Yeah.
But within that marriage, she experienced a lot of abuse.
Yeah.
Domestic violence. Because either his parents didn't know that he was gay, or they knew and they wouldn't let him...
Be gay.
Yeah, be gay. They wanted an arranged marriage. I don't know. But I think they concluded that he was abusing her because he couldn't live the lifestyle that he wanted to live. Because maybe the family thought that it would bring shame to them. I don't know.
Yeah.
But her father, she wanted to get a divorce. She wasn't happy and she wanted to return home to her family home. But her father didn't want anything to do with it. And just said to her, go back and, try and fix things. But it just got so bad and to a point where she forced her parents to see what was going on. Wasn't
it when they realised, correct me if I'm wrong, because I remember your mum telling me about it, wasn't it when they realised that she wasn't going to give them any grandkids or something like that?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I think I remember your mum saying, when they realised that there weren't going to be any kids out of this marriage.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't working, obviously.
Yeah, so they granted the divorce. Even though it wasn't that she could have got a divorce anyway. They don't have to grant their permission.
No.
It's not...
Yeah, exactly. She just has to go to a lawyer.
Under UK law.
Yeah. But it's so sad. Obviously in this case, the husband, the gay person, the perpetrator was the one being violent. But it's just sad when families try and force someone to deny who they are, or they deny who they are. Going back to Ali Fazeli, to be beheaded, that is such, being stabbed, being strangled, whatever. But to be beheaded, that is just...
brutal.
Yeah, that is pure hatred. It's just awful.
Yeah, and the fact that it's, homosexuality or being transgender is considered as a mental illness. It was just so backwards.
Yeah, but I mean, it was considered a mental illness, wasn't it, in Sweden? When we covered Sture.
Yeah, Sture Bergvall.
Wasn't it up until the 70s?
Yeah. Mid-70s, I think it was.
Yeah, so it wasn't that long ago that homosexuality was considered a mental illness in some European countries.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is how I used to describe it. When we were in school, I just used to say, in some of these cultures, the concept of arranged marriages, arranged marriages used to happen in the Jane Austen novels.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just, it wasn't...
It was more about wealth and status.
Yeah, and in some of these cultures, the caste system still, even when I was a teenager, that still apparently mattered to some communities, and hierarchy.
Yeah, some communities say that it doesn't exist anymore, but it does.
Yeah. Yeah, you would know because you've been to India.
Yeah.
But some people would say, it's backwards and blah, blah, blah. And it is, but it wasn't that long ago that these things were happening or these beliefs existed in the Western societies. And now look what's happening in America, So, yeah, it's funny. I know someone, or I used to know someone who's Bengali from a Muslim family, and he is gay. And we used to have these conversations about how we both lived double lives for very different reasons, but more for him.
Yeah, that must be very scary. Like, if you decide to come out to your family.
Yeah.
That must be such a scary step. It doesn't matter who you are. Making that decision is going to be difficult, but to have that added pressure of being seen as, like, shameful.
Yeah. Something that you can't, it's not like you've got control over who you're attracted to or who you fall in love with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like at least as a heterosexual person or a bisexual person, if you end up with someone of the opposite gender, you can just pretend that they follow, in a lot of cases, if you marry outside of ethnicity, like either the other person converts, I'm just using is a Muslim Bengali situation as an example, but either the person converts to Islam or pretends to convert to Islam, but people don't mind because, you're a heterosexual couple and like you can just kind of go along with it. But if you're a gay person, even if your partner converts to the religion or whatever, like it will still never be accepted in most cases because you're not a heterosexual couple, and can't even begin to imagine what it's like for non-binary and transgender people as well. Like that's like a whole other can of worms. So.
Yeah.
And like part of me wonders if you're in a country where they've got the conscription, and you can have medical exemption if you are homosexual, but I wonder how many people don't take the exception and they are homosexual and they just go through with the conscription because
it's easier.
It's easier. But then it also makes me wonder, like, unless the army, being in the army is like absolutely, I don't know, whatever reason you don't want to serve in the army, like, why would you want to use that as your exemption when it can have other consequences? And I know, like, obviously it should be everyone's basic human right to be able to express their sexuality and, like, live without prejudice and repercussions. It's a difficult one. I need to be careful what I'm saying, but, like, if you live in a country where you know the consequences are that harsh, why would you risk it, if that makes sense? I guess in Ali Fazeli's case, he was hoping to leave the country because he knew he would be safer elsewhere. But if you don't have the intention to leave the country, I don't know. It's a difficult one. And obviously, like, we can't answer that question because we're not in those people's shoes and we don't have that lived experience. But it just makes me wonder.
It's almost like a way of the military,
I guess, to out people.
Yeah, easily labelling people.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how it happens in America at the moment with everything going on. And this is really recent. I've only just found this out today. Sorry, this has got nothing to do with honour-based violence, but it has got to do with discrimination against transgender, non-binary people. But the first person who had their sex changed to X for non-binary, they died by suicide recently.
Oh, really? That's really sad.
Yeah, and they sent their suicide note to several news outlets and it was not reported on.
Oh, wow.
And they explained why, and they explained it's because of everything that's happening in the country. And they were a veteran, so they were basically saying, like, don't, fuck all your medals and honours and whatnot. People will discriminate against certain countries like Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, Bangladesh, whatever. And those beliefs do lead to things like honour-based violence and honour-based abuse. But look what's happening in America, It's not much different right now.
No, not at all.
And all those people that believe in these, like, policies and really harmful ways of thinking, like, think of all those people that have family members who might be identified as transgender or non-binary, and they're going to be going through the same thing, I imagine. So it's kind of like it's happening. I imagine it's going to be happening a lot in America going forward because people feel empowered to carry out these crimes.
Yeah.
In the sake of honour.
Yeah. When you've got an idiot in control as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a few idiots.
Yeah.
A few billionaire idiots.
Panel of idiots, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we move on to the case of Nina Aouilk, who is an honour killing survivor, and she tells her story in a documentary on YouTube. Nina's parents came to the UK from Punjab in India in the 1960s. They had very strict cultural beliefs, where girls were not wanted but boys were. Nina's family wouldn't hold her or touch her as they believed she carried bad spirits. She was treated as though she was a witch. She was the only girl born in her immediate and extended family. She has 2 brothers. She was kept in her room from the age of 6, which didn't have the typical kids' toys or furniture. It was a very bare room with brick walls. The only time she was allowed to leave her room was to attend school or to help with the cooking or washing. And that seems a bit young to be doing all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I know in some, at least South Asian cultures, like the girls are taught to cook from a young age, but I don't think it's that young. But yeah, like it just sounds like she was forced to grow up very quickly if she's handling things like, you know, cookers and cooktops and ovens and whatever.
Just seems really dangerous.
Yeah. And I guess I wonder if, well, I'm only assuming here or speculating, but I wonder if she had the fear instilled in her. So she had to do things right in the kitchen.
Yeah.
There was no messing around.
Yeah, there was no choice.
Yeah.
There was no interaction with her family. She didn't make eye contact and had to look down at all times, otherwise she would be hit or get shouted at. This meant that she was non-verbal. She would often listen through the walls to the TV that was on in the other room, as she was not allowed to watch it. Her friend from school used to sing songs from Top of the Pops to her. Her only form of entertainment was books, which she still loves. She was very scared of her parents. Her mother was constantly angry. Nina wanted to please her father and would go out of her way to do things to make him happy, like cooking food as quickly as she could. She mentions that her father gave her a crate that had bottles in it when she was 6 years old, which she used to access cupboards in the kitchen, enabling her to cook quicker. She says that she saw this crate as an extension of her father's love. School was also difficult for her, as she and her brother were the only people of colour. Both her and her brother were beaten up quite a lot by the other kids at school. She wasn't allowed a lunchbox at school, and as she was not getting any food at lunchtimes, one of her friends offered her a jam sandwich. She made that sandwich last the whole lunchtime so that she could fit in with the other children who were sitting inside eating lunch. From the age of 7, her father owned a lot of pubs, so he was a very popular man. He would come home drunk late at night, and her mother would instruct her to go downstairs and cook for her father. At age 14, her father had a group of friends over one night, and they were being exceptionally loud. She walked into the room where her dad and his friends were, carrying a big tray. A man grabbed her wrist and she dropped the tray. He forced her onto the table and raped her. She didn't understand what was happening. There were at least 7 other men in the room who also raped her. She passed out and was woken up by her mother opening and closing the door. She realised that she didn't have any clothes on below her waist, and she was lying in a pool of her own blood. The only thing she could think about at the time was how much food there was on the floor and the walls, and how much trouble she would be in if she didn't clear it up, as her father hated mess.
Wasn't it her father that was one of the men?
He raped her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he raped her on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
Her mother gave her a new set of pyjamas after the attack. Nina doesn't know if this was out of kindness. At no point did her mother offer her any form of comfort or protection, which made Nina feel like it was her fault that she got raped and that she had asked for it. At the time, she didn't understand what sex was, as conversations about sex, periods, and relationships didn't happen in her family home, nor at school. All she knew was that it was wrong. Her mother allowed her to have a shower after the attack. She was only allowed to have bucket baths usually, whereas her brothers were allowed to have showers. Nina had been bitten during the attack and had open wounds, so the shower made them sting even more. Whenever she had to go back inside the room where the attack took place, Her legs would shake with fear. She never knew if the same men would attack her every weekend. When Nina turned 15, she told her mother that she had stopped having periods. Her mother made her realise that she was pregnant, and in her mother's eyes, she was spoiled. Her father sent Nina to her room, and her parents started to argue. Her father put her in his car, which she had never been in before, and he took her to a clinic in the West Midlands to have an abortion. Nina says that the experience at the clinic was the first time someone had shown her love and comfort. She says in the documentary, "It was in the form of a lady, and she brought me a cup of tea. But it wasn't the fact that she handed me the tea. It was the fact that she reached out and touched my hair and stroked me in a very maternal way. It doesn't matter how old you are, we all crave love. And I realised at that point I really was craving some love from another human. And I realised as well that maybe I wasn't as bad because she didn't catch anything by touching me." Nina had been told all of her life that if someone touched her, she would infect them with evilness. Her parents were really upset when they got home and feared that nobody would marry her now that she had had an abortion and that she wasn't a virgin. Her parents discussed the possibility of sending her to India, where they would have arranged a marriage or for her to be killed. What did they expect was going to happen? Like, they allowed for her rape to happen by these other men and her father.
Yeah. And now he's worrying that he can't marry her off.
Yeah.
Well, no shit, Sherlock, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, obviously not that it would have crossed any of their minds, but there obviously was a massive risk of her getting pregnant, given the scale of abuse. But also, there could have been a risk of transmitting an STI.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, obviously abusers never think of that, but what would they have done?
Yeah, exactly. The man that had raped Nina came forward and said that he would take her as his sex slave and a servant to his wife. It just so happens that the man's son was dating a white girl, which was not allowed but very common in Nina's culture. The plan was that Nina would marry the son to make the son look good in the community. The engagement ceremony happened when Nina was 15. She was scared of what would happen when she was left alone with her soon-to-be husband, if she would be a victim of another gang rape. The two families argued about gold and money, but they came to an agreement. Nina was married at the age of 16. In the marital home, she was told that she was to sleep downstairs, but everyone else slept upstairs. Her room was a makeshift cupboard with a small bed. Her gold that she wore at her wedding was taken from her, as well as her belongings, and she was given old things and told to get a job. She didn't really speak to her husband. He was living a separate life where he was happy. Nina's in-laws really controlled what she could do and were a very big part of the mental, physical and sexual abuse she suffered. There was no door to her room, which meant her father-in-law could come in when he chose and raped her.
It's just crazy that the older women in these families, like her mum and her mother-in-law, would let that happen.
Yeah. You don't know what they went through as a young girl.
Yeah.
It could be normalised behaviour.
Yeah, I get it. I get that. And it's like I don't want to say indoctrination, but it reminds me of, you know, that case in India where the gang rape case on the bus.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of the director, but she did a documentary and she interviewed like the wives of the accused men or the perpetrators. And the women were victim blaming as well, saying, well, if this girl, like if she wasn't out at this time and if she wasn't dressed the way she was, then my husband wouldn't have raped her, kind of thing. And you just wonder if, in this case, if Nina's mother and her mother-in-law had that sort of same mentality. Well, they clearly did, because they did nothing to protect her.
Yeah.
And, you know, this woman was clearly okay with her husband violating a young girl in their marital home as well.
Yeah, I imagine she didn't have much choice, though.
Yeah, maybe. And I guess maybe they had some resentment. Maybe, I'm just like, again, this is my perspective, but I wonder if they had some resentment towards her.
Yeah. Nina mentions something in the 90s called the bride burning, where lots of brides were being burnt in the area where she lived. The women were giving birth to baby girls, and so to punish them, the women from the community and the mother-in-laws would pour petrol on them and set them on fire. The police would investigate and more often than not determine they were suicides. I had no idea about this.
No, that's the first time I've heard of it as well. But then at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if police didn't investigate, because when we find out later on from Nina's experience, but like they wouldn't even acknowledge honour-based abuse anyway, and they probably had no. But also, like, surely burning yourself as a way of dying by suicide, it seems there's easier ways to go.
Yeah.
You know?
It wouldn't be your number one choice, would it?
No. I mean, obviously now we have, like, there's more understanding about suicide and the ways people decide to go or decide to attempt them and blah, blah, blah. And I wonder if it was just like a race thing. They didn't want to deal with it because it's not, you know, they culturally prejudice and racially prejudice. I don't know.
Yeah. Nina's father-in-law would abuse her regularly. He tied her up with metal coat hangers and then stripped her so she couldn't move. She wasn't allowed to use the bathroom, so she would soil herself, and she was very skinny due to an eating disorder. Every time she prepared a plate of food, her mother-in-law would throw it in the dustbin and would tell Nina to eat it out of the bin. Nina did at first try to get food out of the bin because she was so hungry, but after a while she gave up. Nina got a job, and it is through this that she discovered who she was as a person. She noticed a different culture, and she could take some control of her life in the workplace. She also wanted to earn more money in the hopes that the family would leave her alone. She managed to make friends at work. She met an Indian girl at work who would notice Nina's bleeding ankles and questioned what was going on. Nina trusted her and so started to tell her things about her home life. The girl was very understanding and didn't judge Nina or her circumstances, and had parents herself who were not very understanding when she was younger, but had changed as she grew older. She suggested to Nina to go back to her parents' home. Nina hoped her parents would be loving and welcoming if she returned. She had built this fairy tale outcome of what her parents would be like, even though they were never like that when she lived at home before she got married. Nina hadn't seen her family for 4 years when she returned. Her father answered the door and straight away pulled Nina by her hair into the house. He took her into the room where she was raped. Her eldest brother, her sister-in-law, and her mother were there, and they proceeded to beat her. It was a very violent attack, and it felt like, to Nina, that they were determined to kill her. Her father is an ex-professional wrestler, and her brother is very tall compared to Nina, who was a small 21-year-old. They broke her jaw and arm. Her dog had been shut in another room and couldn't get to Nina. All throughout the attack, she was told that she was a disappointment and that they should have killed her when she was born. Nina mentions in the interview that a lot of girls in her culture were born and then placed into plastic bags in order to suffocate them. Nina knows about this because a lot of women would come to see her mother after giving birth to a girl. The births were not reported. During the attack, her brother was kicking her. Her father stomped on her, causing her hip to dislocate. Her skin was covered in cuts, bruises, and blood. Her father put his foot on her throat, and at that moment, Nina says that she left her body and thought that she was going to die. She looked at her mum and sister-in-law in hope that they would help, but they stood there with their arms crossed. Nina's other brother walked into the room and shouted, "Not here," and then the beating stopped and they disappeared. Nina was in and out of consciousness then. The door opened and she heard someone say that they were going to take her to India and that she should ask for help at security. She had been in the same position for days after the beating, which caused her body to stiffen. She was covered in blood. She tried to get herself up, but she couldn't. Then she encouraged herself to get to the back door in the kitchen. She had a very small window of opportunity to escape. Once she reached the garden, she realised she had to climb over a 6-foot wall. She felt it was impossible. Then her dog came and encouraged her to climb the wall. The dog usually barked all of the time, but on this occasion it was silent. Nina believes that her dog was a messenger.
Do you know what? A lot of points of this story got to me, but the dog especially.
Yeah, me too.
You know, especially when it was locked in the other room while the attack was going on. And then, obviously, she couldn't have, but I almost wish she could have taken the dog with her when she escaped. Like, those people do not deserve to have a dog, let alone children.
No. I hope that dog was okay after that.
Yeah.
Nina managed to climb the wall, crawled to a little park opposite her house, and she passed out in the bushes. She woke up early in the morning and managed to get to a taxi rank. She realised that she didn't have any money. A white British man saw her and helped her. Nina explained that her parents were trying to kill her. She got into the back of the man's taxi, was covered with a blanket, and the man asked if she wanted to go to the hospital or the police. But Nina wanted to go to her friend's place. Nobody answered the door, but the man didn't leave Nina and eventually took her to the police station. The police took photos of her injuries. She told them it was an attempted honour killing. She said that the police officer looked disappointed and uncomfortable and like he didn't know what to do. The officer advised that she should go to a hospital, which she did. Nobody visited her and nobody asked who she was. After the attack, her brother came looking for her 15 years after because he had attacked his partner with a hammer. The police put him into a program where he didn't have to do any jail time if he put right what he had ever done wrong in his life. He mentioned to them that he attacked his sister in an attempted honour killing. Nina was understandably scared of her brother, but he asked for forgiveness, and Nina said, "I forgave you all a long time ago, but I just cannot forget." She says that she forgave them the moment they did something wrong, because that's the kind of person she was.
She's a better person than I am.
Yeah, I would have hunted them down and to do lots of things that I won't mention.
I mean, she's so eloquent and softly spoken, and you can kind of tell what sort of person she is despite everything that she's been through.
In 2015, Nina's father was jailed after abducting his 6-year-old illegitimate daughter. He had an affair with a Polish woman who fell pregnant, and he asked her to abort the child, but she didn't. He abducted his daughter and sold her to human traffickers in India. The police went to India to trace the girl, but they couldn't find her. Nina started to work with human trafficking organisations, and she managed to track down where her sister had been left. It was a place where they harvest organs. Nina did a podcast with James Whittaker, where she says, "It's so important to hold people accountable, otherwise they do the same thing over and over again. And he feels very much untouchable, my father. So he was jailed for 4 years, but because of the cultural element of the charges, he didn't get the full sentence. So when he came out of prison, he was celebrated for the abduction because the community felt he'd upheld his honour."
How can he upset his honour when he's the one that had an affair?
Yeah,
Sorry.
and basically killed his child.
Kidnapped a child and sold her to organ
harvesters.
Yeah.
Nina doesn't speak to her parents now. They continuously threaten her and have said that they will behead her. She says that she receives over 40 death threats from her family and people that she doesn't even know. She says that if a woman leaves an arranged marriage in her culture, then she must be killed in order for the family to retain their honour. She says that she speaks out, not to bring disrespect to her culture, but to say every human life should be valued, whether you are born a boy or a girl. Nina is now an award-winning activist, a TEDx speaker, and holds online courses within her London's Life Coach School of Empowerment.
Yeah, and we highly recommend watching that YouTube documentary because she goes on to talk about her life after what happened with her family, and like there's so much more that she goes through.
Yeah, that she's endured.
Yeah. And it's funny, like in her professional career, she excelled, but she was still going through hell in her personal life. And it's kind of going back to what we were discussing earlier, like with me going to work and like leading that double life where I'd go to work and, you know, I'd work however many hours in the office and then I'd go back home to these expectations within the family or within the culture.
Mm.
Obviously, she had a much more extreme
version.
Yeah, distinction. And but she's just come out the other end, and like she's just such a strong person to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, she's a very brave individual who is sticking up for other people who have gone through this or going through it at the moment.
Yeah.
And she really wants to put a stop to this barbaric violence and killing.
Yeah, yeah. And like she's gone through hell, and now she's using that, making like it's given her the strength to do good with her, like whatever she's experienced, she's doing. Oh my God, I've got no eloquence in me today. But you know what I'm saying, don't you?
Yeah, she's found the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm hoping life is better for her.
Yeah, and I hope it sounds like she's come out of that cycle of abuse, because that's what she went through for a while.
Mm.
And in that same series of documentary, it's like part of a series, I think. There was another one of a Bengali girl who went through an arranged marriage.
Mm.
And when she came out of that, she also continued having unhealthy relationships and like went through a cycle of abuse. And she's also come out now, and she, similar to Nina, she speaks out, talks about her experience in order to help others. Yeah, it's the fact that like both these women, they've been through absolutely horrendous things, and now they're using their experiences to try and make sure no one else goes through it.
Yeah, and there is an organisation in the UK called endhonourkillings.org, which helps victims by providing emergency transport, accommodation and food. It's a non-profit organisation, and it does rely on donations to provide these services. To date, they have helped 16,000 women globally escape a life of honour-based abuse and violence.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Nina Aouilk is a co-founder, and she did an emotional TED Talk about this, which we'll link to on our website under the show notes for this episode, along with the YouTube video that we watched and all the other research we did for this episode.
There's another organisation which I heard about. I hope it's still active. I heard about years and years ago through a Vice documentary called Faith to Faithless, and it's like a helpline for people leaving high-controlled religions. And this Vice documentary, it was looking at, for example, people denouncing Islam and facing very severe consequences, to the point either faced honour-based abuse, and it affected their mental health. Like obviously, like a couple of the individuals in that documentary, they attempted suicide or they had like severe mental health issues because obviously they face the repercussions of leaving the religion of their families or their communities. So there is a helpline called Faith to Faithless, helping people in those situations.
And that's just inside the UK, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. I mean, there is no honour.
Yeah, it shouldn't be called honour killing because there is no honour. It's a shameful act to kill a member of your family.
It is, especially in Nina's case, something that she couldn't control. She was born a girl. Like, I feel like, I mean, they're all extreme and they're all horrible, all the cases that we've discussed. But it's like for her, it was so explicitly made clear that it was just because she was born a girl, like from day one. Whereas, like, you know, in the other cases, it's like, okay, their expectation was you're born a girl, you're going to grow up and get married, you're going to do what we expect you to do. And if you don't, you're better off dead kind of thing. And obviously in the homosexual cases, it's like you're born a man, you have to be heterosexual and like whatnot. But yeah, it's crazy when, and I know it happens, and it still happens when, like, as I've said before, when people emigrate. And I guess, you know, obviously first generation, or like immigrants back then, when they moved to places like to Europe, UK or the US, they obviously didn't know what the cultures were like. They would have emigrated for a better life, but not really understanding what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're raising their children in these cultures, and it would have been the first time that they would have had to raise their children integrating in these cultures, but still expecting those values from back home to be adhered to. But the fact, you know, going back to the case that happened in January, it's like the fact that it's still happening is crazy.
Yeah, it's completely insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand at all. I really don't.
Neither do I, and I'm from that from that world, you know. Especially like, and the whole male privilege thing is such a big thing, because like, look at all the way the men and the boys have behaved in these cases. Like, they're the ones that have been the real abusers. They're the ones that have been the real shameful individuals, but they get away with literally murder.
Yeah.
And people find them honourable. And whereas the women are told to not behave in certain ways because they'll bring dishonour to the family or the culture or the community. I want to make clear, obviously not every family or every culture is like that within the South Asian or like the Iranian or Iraqi or Turkish communities, but they are there, they exist, and they still exist, as we know.
As we've discussed,
as we've discussed. But I'd like to think there's more awareness around it now.
And I'm hoping that there's more help for people.
Yeah.
Especially if they go to the police. Let's hope they put them forward to the right institutions to help these people.
There's 2 movies that have come out I want to say last few years, but they're quite old now. But there were 2 movies that deal with honour-based abuse that are worth watching. There's a Turkish movie called Mustang.
Okay.
And it's about 3 girls, or 3 sisters, I think it's 3 or 4 sisters that grow up in a Turkish village, and it follows their story. And like, one scene, it reminds me of one of the cases that we talked about, but like, there's one scene where the girls are just like frolicking with boys from their school, like innocent, just playing on the beach. But because people in the community saw the girls playing, like splashing water with boys on the beach, they were locked in their house and arranged marriages.
Oh, wow.
It's a really hard movie to watch, but I highly recommend it because it kind of touches on these subjects.
So it's not a documentary, it's a fictionalised...
No, it's a movie. It's a
story.
movie. The other one, this one is based on a true story. I think it's a Norwegian movie, somewhere from your end. It's called, I think it's called What Will They Say?
Okay.
I think it's a Pakistani lady. I don't know if she wrote it or she directed it, but it's based on her real experience. But she had a white boyfriend who she snuck into her room, which is brave.
Yeah.
You know. And her father found the boy in her bedroom, beat the boy up, and then she was sent to Pakistan. And it's all about her, what she went through as a result of that. And I highly recommend that movie as well. Again, difficult to watch, but worthwhile.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, well, that was a heavy one.
That was, and it brought up a lot of memories for me.
Yeah, it was a very emotional one for you.
Yeah, I didn't get too emotional, I don't think. I didn't get too angry.
No.
No, it hit home because I completely relate to a lot of what these victims have gone through. Obviously, in my case, it's never been as extreme as, like, I've never been threatened with honour-based violence. But, you know, it's been there in my extended family. where like I've had relatives, like I've had one relative who was in an abusive marriage, and I remember growing up being very young and seeing her with like black eyes, and like everyone knew what was happening, but no one was doing anything about it. And like you'd see her at family gatherings with black eyes, but it was just kind of like no one acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And it took years for them to divorce. I don't know why they finally, like what happened for a divorce to finally be on the table, but like this went on for years. It was like an open secret.
Did they have children?
No, like in a way, thank God, because I don't want to know what the children would have grown up
No.
experiencing. And again, like the husband, he seemed so nice. He was really friendly. I remember him being very friendly with me and just like seeming like a nice guy.
Mm.
And I was too young to understand what was happening, but I remember the black eyes. And then it was later on in life, as I grew up,
Yeah.
I understood. And I've also had another relative who, she wanted a love marriage, but her parents had a marriage arranged for her. They didn't approve of her boyfriend, well, her now husband, but they didn't approve of who she was seeing. And she was actually locked in a room and had a knife held to her throat.
Oh, wow.
To like force her to marry who she was supposed, like who they wanted her to marry. But she managed to get out and she eloped with her now husband. I believe she's like no contact with her family.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that I can relate to with these cases.
Yeah. I remember I was speaking about arranged marriages.
Yeah.
I remember your mum used to post pictures
Oh my God, yeah.
of eligible bachelors.
Oh, it gives me the major ick.
She used to post them under your door, didn't she?
Yeah, she
bedroom.
did. Like, it's the fact that she would have conversations with her friends.
Mm.
Like, they'd come up to her and say, oh, we know someone who's looking to get married, because they knew my mum wanted me to get married.
Mm.
It just gives me the ick thinking about it, because these conversations were happening without my knowledge.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden she'd like pass an envelope and it would be a marriage CV.
Really?
So it would be a photograph of the guy,
Mm-hmm.
and there would be like a piece of paper saying like his parents' name, what village in Bangladesh they're from, his educational background, his professional background, blah, blah, blah. And I think growing up, obviously I was quite rebellious.
Mm.
And, you know, I had boyfriends, so I knew what it was like to be in, well, I didn't know what it was like to be in a relationship, but because I didn't really have healthy relationships back then anyway. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you knew what a relationship entailed.
yeah. And I knew the process of getting to know someone to find out whether you like them or not. The thought of just meeting someone, not knowing anything about them, and then being expected to be their wife, like, ugh, sorry, like, ugh. It's just like, I mean, obviously now we've got TV programs called Married at First Sight. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, at least in that case, like on those shows, they do take like what people, I think people say like what they're looking for, and then the producers try and like match them. But I mean, there's no matching in our cultures. It's like, is he available? Is he available? Like, they don't even, my mum had 2 criteria. It was like the person had to be similar to my age, because often there would be a big age gap. So she didn't want me to marry someone old, because she knew what that was like. And she didn't want me to live with the mother-in-law, because she knew what mother-in-laws could be like. But it's like, still, that's a bit low, the bar.
Yeah.
No. And yeah, like, thank goodness I met Alex.
Yeah. And your mum approved of him
Yeah.
straight away, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. She did. But like, it took years, because eventually she was like, I don't care who you married as long as he's Muslim. But yeah, it was just, it just gives me the ick thinking about it. And there was one occasion where someone actually came to the house, and I just thought he was a relative of a relative. So I just thought he was just visiting because they were just visiting. They were in the area like but he was actually there to see me
Okay.
as a potential bride. And I found out about it after, and I was just like, ugh. Like, the fact that he was physically in the house that I lived in to see what I was like as, you know, it's just, I couldn't have done it. Like, definitely. And it, you know, it did cause a lot of arguments in the house because I was getting old and not married, and what was I doing with my life? And I did have relationships, blah, blah, blah. But, thank fuck for that. And I think because of those experiences growing up, I have never found a Bengali person attractive because, you know, I mean, and I'm not saying that happens with everyone, but I never ever wanted to like marry within my culture because, like, no.
Yeah.
I'm too much of a coconut. So, yeah, that's a nice light note to end on.
Yeah. Oh, we actually have a couple of mentions to make as well.
Yeah.
We want to say thank you very much to those who have bought us coffee.
Yes, thank you.
The past month. If you have not bought us a coffee and you would like to, you can visit buymeacoffee.com/Felonious. There is also a link to that on our website right at the bottom of the page. And we also have a Patreon set up. We have quite a few episodes on there now. So we would like it very much if you could head on over there at patreon.com/Felonious_pod. And that link is also on our website at the very top of the page.
Yeah, so for a membership, it's like €1, which I think is quite a good deal.
Yeah.
We release monthly episodes on current news, and we've done a documentary review with a special guest.
Yes, my boyfriend, Chris.
Yes, who has worked in TV and production.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have an update on the Charles Surprise case as well, don't we? So
Yes.
we've got like extra bits and bobs on there.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, and subscribe and like us on whatever platform you listen to us on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the show. We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find more information about the show on our website at feloniouspod.com or on our Instagram at felonious.pod.
Links to our show notes can be found in the episode description, as well as through our website and social media. You can visit our Contact Us page and tell us what you think about the show, and if there are any cases you would like us to cover. We hope you join us for the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye!